So, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another video here on the FAI's YouTube channel. And today we're going to be doing a debriefing of my performance at the ninth FAI World Championships of skydiving, specifically canopy piloting and also canopy piloting freestyle. So, basically, I'm just going to watch the video and tell you guys what was going through my mind and what I was thinking about, why I did certain decisions, why I failed where I failed, why I succeeded where I succeeded. It's better and easier for me to do this than doing the vlogs, because the vlogs I'm worried about the competition and I have a lot of stuff on my mind. So this is just, I think it's a little bit better. So what was my kind of strategy for the comp? I really did not want to push it too hard, because I knew if I could get all consistent scores, I could get a pretty good overall ranking, which as you start competing, as the competition starts to go on, you start to realize that you want to push it a little bit harder. Maybe start to figure out a little bit better how the things are going in terms of how your canopy is flying and all that, and you start to want to make a little bit more aggressive decisions. And that can sometimes, of course it can be dangerous, obviously. I'm not going to say it can't, but what ends up happening is you're not going to be risking yourself, because you have the experience to not be risking yourself, but you are going to be putting yourself at a less accuracy, so to speak. Even if you're not doing zone accuracy, you're going to have less consistency. That's what I meant. So let's just start and talk a little bit about each round. So first off, we have zone accuracy round one. Going into zone accuracy round one, I was expecting to have strong headwinds, because the training days were strong headwinds. But we didn't. We had nice light headwinds, which is actually perfect for this type of competition. Still, I set myself up a little bit deep. Why? It's normal for us to do this in competition. When you're training, you just want to do the box. You want to go for the box. If you fall on the box and if you fall forwards, it's fine. It's not a problem. If you do that in competition, it's going to be a really bad score if you fall forwards for zone 9. So what we do is, everybody does this, we go, a little bit in the safer side, and we just move our setup point a little bit back. Or if we don't move our setup point back, we drag a little bit harder to kill a little bit more of the speed. It's always more beneficial to get the zone before and stand up than to get the zone after down. So what ends up happening is, if you really want to go for the zone after, you'll try to go for the zone after, but you'll fall back on the zone before. So let's say you're going to make it to zone 3 and you try to make it to zone 4. You could make it to zone 3 up, or you could try to make it to zone 4, but what's going to happen is you're going to fall on zone 4 or fall on zone 3, land on zone 4 and fall back on zone 3, which is going to give you even less points than you just stood up on zone 3. And this is what happened here. I was going to make it to zone 4. I tried to make it to zone 5, to stand up on zone 5. My feet did go past the tape, but I didn't really make it, and I fell backwards kind of hilariously. So zone 4 down and got all the water gates. Not that bad. Now, round 2. I was starting to figure out a little bit how the wind was working, how the air was feeling that day, and I was like, okay, let's go. Let's push it a little bit harder. I gave it a little bit of a harder whip. I wasn't tighter. I had the same exact setup point. I just went a little harder on the whip. Right on the edge, like as I was leaving the water, I felt like I had a little bit too much power, and I dug my foot really hard, which killed a little bit of the speed. But then I realized halfway through my pop-up after the water that I needed a little bit more speed to make it to the box. And with the wind conditions, you could stand up on the box, no problem. And I tried to throw my feet onto zone 6, but my feet caught on the tape and I got zone 5 up, which isn't bad. Again, it is sometimes frustrating to get zone 5 up when you had your feet on zone 6 and you just barely touched zone 5, but it's okay. Now, round 3. Here's my first mistake. It's normal. I don't think it was really a mistake, so to speak. I think it's kind of bad luck. Everybody was getting headwinds, and then I was doing my turn and saw the windsock just turn around and gave me a hard downwind, and my setup point was already for headwind, so that was a little bit unlucky or whatever. So I tried to put my turn a little bit backwards to let the canopy drive itself away from the gate, but that's always dangerous to do. If you let it drive too much and you whip, you're going to be a little bit low. So you got to be careful when you do that. So my plan was to try to whip it not that hard, and I went to toggles to slow down. And, when I did go to toggles, I had a lot of power. I put my foot on the water hard, and it made me pop up a little bit, so I lost gate 2. But I was able to get back on the water for gate 3, and I dragged really hard on gate 3 and between gate 3 and 4 to really kill some speed. And then when you're doing downwind zone act, it's really not trying to stand up or whatever. If it's, strong headwind, it wasn't strong, but it was a good breeze, a good downwind breeze. I really tried to stop, and then just as soon as I felt like I was going to travel too much, I tried to collapse the canopy or to stop the canopy, and I stopped on zone 4. Sometimes going for zone 5 or 6 and trying to stop it on downwind is going to be complicated. The canopy, you still might carry a lot of speed, and speed might drive you into zone 9. So I was able to stop the canopy on zone 4. Could have been on zone 5, would have been better, but I'm happy with the result. I didn't lose too many points because gate 2 isn't worth that many points. But it was still some loss because of the water. That was fine. So that was zone accuracy. Let's move on to distance. Now, before we move on to distance, let's just talk about what I could have done better on zone accuracy. Going a little bit harder when you have headwind, just to have a little bit more distance to travel. It's hard to kill speed after you're off the water, but while you're on the water, it's easy to kill speed. You just dig your foot in a little bit harder, even if you can dig both feet in. So going a little bit harder, not being so scared of getting a lot of speed is probably going to be my strategy. Even if I get 1 or 2 zone 9s in the future, that's what I'm going to try to do. And if you do see, of course, if I have downwind, that was a little bit unlucky, so I don't know what to say there, but I can improve with time, just focusing on what I need to do. Now, distance. We continued on to distance after zone accuracy, and as I showed you guys, they started with a slight headwind breeze, and then it changed to a downwind breeze, which is perfect for distance. It wasn't so perfect for the last zone accuracy run, but it still felt good. First round of distance, testing out the water, seeing how the canopy is flying, not going super aggressive. The wind was, good. It was a perfect wind for the distance. I set myself up deeper than I needed to be, but, just to be safe and have time to touch the water and lift it off. And here, I think I could have lifted off a lot more. I didn't, pop up as much as I wanted. I wanted to go a little bit more, but I didn't, want to give the canopy a lot of upwards momentum and then not have energy to slow me down and touch down softly. So I was focusing on touching down softly, and I did touch down softly if you watch the video. But, it was, not as much as I could have gone. I could have gone upwards of 140 meters. I did 136, but I'm happy with that. It was a personal best in a competition, so that was good for me. So 136 was good. I wouldn't change it for the world. If I could pop up a little bit more, I would pop up a little bit more. Now, here's when things start to go wrong, and when the comp went down the toilet, so to speak. I started to look at the wind conditions, and I was thinking, okay, I want to put up a good score for me to regain the points I lost on zone accuracy. And so what I did was I was thinking, okay, the wind is coming in slightly from west. So when we're landing towards north, and the wind was coming in we landed towards south. The wind was coming in from north, but slightly northwest. So the perfect alignment with the wind would be to fly downwind towards southeast. Now the landing is towards south. So what you want to do is, as you can see on the video, I finished my turn a little bit to the right of the gates, to my right of the gates, so that the canopy could drift into the gates during the recovery arc and have less air resistance because the air is pushing you into the gates. Now, I thought about this, and what you have to do is just set up a little bit closer. You change your setup point a little bit towards west, and you're good. Now, here's the thing: when you do this, you're also going to be rotating 45 degrees more because you got to aim for the gates, and I even went a little bit more than I should have. So, I did my turn, instead of being an 810, it was an 810 plus, 45 degrees. So 855, whatever. And you do lose more altitude with a turn that's 45 degrees more. And especially when you're, trying to go as low as possible and as fast as possible, it is going to make a difference. So it did make a difference. And because, I was like, I want to give it all the canopy's got. I want to give it power. I want to make the canopy fly far. I went a little bit lower than a jump before, just held on a little bit more and gave it a nice hard snap. But, when I finished the snap. I realized I'm off the gates, and I think a lot of the guys that saw it from the ground said, "Yeah, I thought you were gonna make it. You weren't that low, but it felt a little low, and I didn't want to risk it, so I went to toggles. I put my foot down, tried to touch the water, but the foot barely missed the water, which is okay. It's fine. Everybody makes mistakes, and I made this mistake here. Went a little low. I went on toggles soon. Tried to touch the water, didn't touch the water, but that's okay. We can correct that on the next jump and in future competitions. So remember, guys, it's always fun to be on a comp and have fun, but if you live on an ambulance, it's not going to be that much fun for you. You're going to feel a lot of pain, and it's not going to be good to demonstrate how the discipline is if you're getting hurt and hitting the water and flipping around in the water. It's not good to show to other people. It's not good to show to your sponsors, to the people who are looking at you fly. Crashing the water is definitely not going to be something that's going to make you look like a proficient, a confident, and consistent flyer. And I really didn't want to risk it. Maybe I couldn't make it, but I don't want to find out. I went toggles, didn't touch the water. That was a 3. So better luck next time. Now let's move on to round 3. Of course, this is why I was already super sad. I was like, fuck this, fuck that. I did use the same technique, but the wind wasn't coming in from east as much. It was kind of changing, and it was always going, but it was pointing north, but it was always changing. So it doesn't matter. The wind's coming from north, so towards south. Round 3, I still went a little bit to the right because I knew the wind's going to push me into the gates. But round 3 was pretty much no wind at all. Sometimes I like to go a little bit towards the right just so I can see where the gate is a little bit closer, and I can touch the water a little bit more accurately. Now, let's say if you're safely touching the water with a lot of space behind the gates, you can be right in between them. It's not a problem. But if you're going tight, or if you make a mistake and you end up being tight, it's better to be close to the buoy so you can really see when you need to touch, so you can make a perfect touch right on the gates. And that's what I did. I went right on the gates, and as I was leaving the exit gate 50 meters after, I knew okay, I'm going to really try to milk the juice out of this canopy. I try to really pop it up. And it did pop up a good amount. I think this was my best distance run, even though it was not as much distance as the first round. It was 16 meters before. This was no wind at all. And I felt like the canopy really climbed really well and made me happy the way the canopy climbed. And was, to me, a nice way to finish distance. Safe, nice way. Could have had a better second round, but didn't. So now let's move on to speed. This was the next day. We did 6 jumps in the first day. Second day was speed. Now, here's the thing, guys. Every time my first jump of the day, I gotta figure out the air. I gotta figure out everything. I'm still sleeping. And this is what happened on speed. I was like, yeah, I don't want to do speed in the morning because I want to be figured out by the time I grab my 59. When you do zone accuracy, you're flying I'm flying my 66.6. I can be half asleep. I fly it all the time when I'm doing work jumps. And I can be half asleep. I know how to swoop that thing. The 59, fully loaded. I need a wake-up jump, and I didn't have a wake-up jump, which is an excuse. Again, this is excuse. But it is kind of what happened to me. I was like, yeah, I need a wake-up jump. I was still half asleep, but I did do a nice turn. In my head, I was a little bit low. And the canopy, right before I was on the gate, I felt like the canopy was a little bit low, and I went to toggles. Still flew the course relatively fast, so 3.0 seconds. And this is faster than some of my first competition runs when I was starting out. But of course, this was on toggles. So it was pretty good. I think okay, in the worst scenario, this was the best time that I could have get flying the course in toggles. And as we can see, we had no wind, sometimes a little bit of a headwind breeze, but nothing substantial. So I think perfect conditions for having fun. Now, first jump, cappuccino jump, got that thing out of the way, cleared my head out of that, was ready to, progress, to move forwards and to actually start putting in some decent scores. So the trick with the flying a wing as small as the 59 is it's a little bit tricky to recover, and it's also a little bit tricky to explain, but I'm going to try to do my best. So when you're flying your 67, you just make yourself small, try to, create as little of a surface area with your body as possible, but, that isn't really making it is making a difference, but not making a huge difference. The power that you bring is going to make the biggest difference. Now, when flying the 59, if you're not flying it and you're not bringing in the power, not bringing in the speed, you're not putting in the juice, the canopy is simply not going to fly properly. The canopy requires high speed going through its shape in order to create enough lift to drive you out of the recovery arc and through the gates on rears efficiently. And if you don't bring enough speed and if you don't bring enough power, that's not going to happen. So if you do a shitty turn and a soft finished turn, you're not going to have enough speed to recover. Same thing applies if you're doing a huge turn, but you're not whipping it hard, or you're finishing a little bit high. What's going to happen is it's going to kill a lot of the speed, and when you need that power, when you need that speed to drive the canopy out of the recovery arc and fly through the course, it's not going to have the power. So flying, I'd say a sub 61, a sub 62. My 62 is still pretty, I'd consider it pretty easy to fly if you're in a competition level. But the 59 starts to be a little bit trickier. I know a lot of people that rather have a 62, 64 for speed than a 59 or a 60 because it's a lot trickier to fly. And if you don't put in the jumps, you're definitely not going to be flying it the way it should be flown. And I have quite a little bit of jumps on this canopy. It's only like 50. So again, this is the smallest, fastest canopy I jumped. I have jumped to 56, but it was a JVX. It's not even canopy for performance, just for fun. But my performance canopy, this is my highest wing loading, my smallest canopy, whatever. So it is really, really tricky to fly. The trick with this canopy is for the canopy to have a little bit more power. Instead of you leaning backwards, you can't really lean backwards like you can on the Mutant on this canopy, on this harness, of course. But what you can do is the opposite of the Mutant. You can lean forwards, and of course you say, oh, but leaning forwards, doesn't it make the canopy dive a little bit more? Well, that does happen on the Mutant, and it's going to be a little bit different on a normal canopy. When you're leaning forward, you're putting a lot more weight on the nose of the canopy, which if you look in the video, and when you're yanking the rear risers, you're kind of reshaping the canopy and making the nose of the canopy a little bit soft, and it's going to create a less effective recovery arc, and it's going to make the canopy dive a lot more as opposed to recover. So when you're leaning forwards, putting a little bit more of the weight, changing the center of gravity of the canopy is actually helping the canopy not recover. It's not going to recover faster, of course. If you have your whole body leaning forwards, it's going to have a little bit of a wedge shape, and that wedge shape is going to make the canopy recover a little bit better. Of course, that's the way Nick Batch flies, or he used to fly for the Mutant. But that's not what I do. I still don't have the confidence to do that, and I don't think I will. By the time I have the confidence to do that, the Mutant's going to be, already on my back flying all the performance runs. But in this case, I do try to lean forwards, put a little bit more of the weight on the nose of the canopy, changing the center of gravity to help my risers have a little bit more of an effective input, and flying the course finally greatly. Again, I'm not leaning forwards a lot, like you see a lot of people leaning forwards, but I am leaning forwards as much as I can, and it does help the canopy recover. Now, there is a little bit of a psychological barrier when you're trying to lean forwards during the recovery arc, and that is that you're afraid you'll hit the water and you go flipping, and that, I do know people that has happened. My suggestion would be to, in the beginning, not lean forwards completely like gung-ho. That's what I used to do in training during the time I was training the leaning forwards on the recovery. I would just lean forwards gung-ho, and it does work. If you're finishing high and you're in a super controlled environment, which when you're jumping in your home DZ you are, that does work perfectly, actually. So you'll get huge swoops. The canopy is going to feel a whole lot different. But when you're flying in a competition standpoint, things are going to change. You're going to have a lot more variables. You're going to feel a little bit more pressure to perform correctly. And, leaning forwards is going to make you a little bit more scared. And when I started leaning forwards during training for a comp was in France. And what I was doing is I was just, the winds were really, really fast for it was like downwind speed, and the wind was perfectly aligned with the course, so it was like really, really nice wind for doing competition runs, not for training something new. For training something new, completely no wind is probably the perfect way to do it. So I was sending it and leaning forwards, and I couldn't control the speed of the canopy, and it was making me scared, so I kind of gave up on that. And then Jason Sanders just told me, dude, lean forwards, because I started doing it, leaning forwards halfway through the course. I started getting more confident leaning forwards halfway through the course. And by the time I was, almost done with training, I was almost starting to lean forwards as soon as I, got the first gate. And, Jason Sanders told me, dude, I saw you lean forwards, you're going late. I was having a shitty day at training speed, and he told me, dude, trust it. It's better to lean forwards because you're giving the canopy more power than to be leaning backwards. You're creating a cup with your body, the air is pulling you down. You're not putting the weight where the weight needs to be. So lean forwards. And if you look at the videos of me when I don't lean forwards, the canopy feels a lot more misshapen. Like it feels like you're pulling the rear risers and you're making the canopy shape weird. And if you look at it when I'm leaning forwards, the canopy's flying a lot better. So this is what if you're looking to do this where you lean forwards on the speed course, what I recommend is start getting the first gate and leaning forwards on gate 3. And as you're doing gate 3, you lean forwards. What this is happening is what this is going to make is you're going to have to transfer to toggles a lot later, which is what I felt. Just start going earlier. You're going to feel like the canopy, you're using all the canopy's rear riser powers, and as soon as you lean forward, the canopy is going to have a lot more drive. So instead of you going to toggles earlier, you're going to be able to fly the course on rears pretty much every time, and except headwind conditions, which was kind of the case here. But you're going to be flying a lot faster on rears, and the canopy is going to feel a lot more pressurized as soon as you start leaning forwards. And then just start leaning forwards earlier and earlier. You're going to start feeling like you're confident with leaning forwards before even gate 2, instead of being gate 3, before gate 2, and then almost on the entry gate, and then even before the entry gate. And now, by the time I was finishing the comp, I would whip the canopy. As soon as I saw it was in the right alignment, I would start leaning forwards. So this is my tip. Instead of, whipping it and leaning forwards, just whip the canopy, see where you are, and once you see the height you are with your side picture, and you realize that the amount of speed and the way the canopy is recovering, then you start leaning forwards. And, after, 50, I don't say 50 jumps, but 20 jumps training this, you're going to start nailing it. If you have some experience flying the course, it's going to be second nature. So this is exactly what I did. Second run was a lot better, 2.625 with, a little headwind breeze. And then third run, I was like, yeah, let's just go a little bit faster. And I managed to do a 2.618, which is not a huge difference, but I'm happy with it. Didn't vert speed, which speed is the thing I vert the most. But with this new body position, I don't think I'll vert speed as much. With my old body position, where I would just make myself a small ball, my legs would be over the beam sometimes. And in this case, that doesn't happen, fortunately, because my legs are kind of pointing down. Now, the mind thing where you're scared you'll hit your knees on the water and go flipping, what I do is I sit a lot on the harness and then I lean forward. So I'm kind of a hybrid position between leaning forwards and sitting like a ball. And then as you get more experience, you can start arching a little bit more on your belly strap so that your body is like almost flat, leaning forwards and creating a little bit more upwards lift, making the canopy do a little bit less work and letting the canopy fly a little bit more pressurized instead of yanking on the rear risers. So everything else, I just had to extend my leg down to keep myself in the course. I tend to fly a little high over the water just because it's just some habit. But 3 good runs and the comp was over. So moving on to the third World Championships of Freestyle Canopy Piloting. Coming into this competition was my first, official FAI freestyle competition, whatever. And I never really do freestyle. I just got used to flying, Petras, and they aren't, the best to learn freestyle on. You can definitely freestyle on Petras, and the good guys do it. But learning on a Petra to freestyle is a little bit complicated. So what I did was, I had a friend's old JVX 75, and 75 for me was a nice number for me to do some freestyle on. So I got to 75. And I have a 69, but I didn't want to get it wet. And the 75, doesn't matter if it gets wet or not. And when you're doing a freestyle competition, it's good that you do something that you really can do. And I was supposed to train a lot more than I did. I just had a lot of troubles. I had to borrow my rig and all of that, the rig where the 75 was in. So I ended up training only 3 training jumps. And what I thought was, I'm going to try to do variations on what I can do. So the 2 things I always train when I'm training freestyle is the blind man, which is something I really aspire to be able to do correctly, and any type of variation of a switchblade. So the first freestyle tricks I kind of did was like a lazy boy and all of that. And, it's really not a very complicated trick, but it does look really good because you displace a lot of water. And that's kind of what they want to see is the whole water displacement thing. So I thought to myself, okay, first round, let's try to do a move with a lot of points, which is the move with the most points I can do is a blind man. So I try to do the blind man. I did a crappy blind man, but I was scared of getting wet because if you do get wet, you get 0 points. So I did a crappy blind man, downwinding it, but I don't have any videos whatsoever, unfortunately, of the blind man. Nor I don't have my cameras. I don't have anything. So I can't show you that. If it does show up, I'll post it maybe. But I did, kind of do it. Second round, I was supposed to do a switchblade cowboy, or a switch cow as they call it. And what you do in this is toggles in one hand, both feet dragging on the heels, and then touching the water with your other hand. And I am really, really happy with what I did. It went great when I did it in training. I did a really, really nice one, very smooth. But here, the canopy moved a little bit to the right, which does seem like it's something that always happens because you have the toggles on the left hand, and your left hand tends to be moving to the left, so it pulls the right toggle a little bit more, and the canopy moved to the right. And as I was supposed to jump onto the left, so what happened was the canopy moved towards the right, pulling me inside of the pond instead of bringing me out. So I went for a nice swim. There you go, perfect. Moving on to round 3, I was gonna do something that I was never able to do, and I think I did it. I'm happy with how I did it. Tech jockey Superman. Now, I did start dragging a little bit late. I wanted to drag a little bit earlier, but the winds did pick up a little bit. So tech jockey is both toggles in one hand, and then putting your hand on grabbing your leg with one hand. So one foot dragging, the other foot you grab. And Superman, you lean forward. So that's exactly what I tried to do. And then I landed on a big, big mountain of dirt or whatever. So, I've never done it. I tried it during training, but I ended up going for a swim. And, I did do it. Both toggles in one hand grabbing the shoe, dragging my toe. I did it. And then I tried to lean forwards a little bit, just to try to get a little bit more points. And, I'm happy with that performance. Definitely one of my best freestyle jump was this one. So, guys, thank you for watching this dumbass video of me explaining random swoop stuff, me debriefing my own comp. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Follow me on the social medias, and I'll see you guys next time.